take a thumbnail.
How to sew on your pointe shoes? Hey, it's Josephine from the Pointe Shop. Today we're gonna be doing, Today we'll be doing a very overdue video. I'm gonna show you how to sew on pointe shoes, and I'm also gonna be answering all of your questions about your first pair of pointe shoes. Let's start out with all of the things that you will need to sew your pair of pointe shoes. You need a pair of scissors for your elastics and ribbons and to cut your thread. You need a pen or a pencil to mark where to sew your ribbons and elastic, a lighter, or you can use clear nail polish to keep it from fraying. Thread, you can do really thick wax thread, or you can use dental floss, whatever you have at hand. A really great needle. I like these ones with the really big eye because it's just easier to thread through. And then obviously your ribbons and elastic. Now there are a lot of different ways on how to sew ribbons and elastic, but we're gonna start out in the most generic way possible, and you can figure out where you want to adjust it to as you get more experienced. It is important to sew your own ribbons and elastic because that's the only way to learn exactly where you like it. Start by measuring your elastic and your ribbons. Put your pointe shoe on, take your piece of elastic. You want to make it pretty snug right around your ankles. I typically like my elastic a little bit further back because I have a smaller heel and it tends to slip off. You're gonna mark it right here on your shoe. Pull it to the other side, mark on that side, and right across. A second way to measure is to fold your pointe shoe down like this. You can mark it right across. And then right where that mark is, you can sew on the elastic. And that's the easiest way to do it, but it's not as personalized. But I'm gonna do it in my method back here so that it's tilted. You can see that I marked it right where the elastic is slanted, the two parallel markings. And then I also mark it right across so that you can remember exactly where the elastic should go. You can sew the elastic on the inside or outside. It does help if you like your shoes very, very tight to sew it on the outside so nothing rubs inside your shoes. But I prefer to sew it on the inside just because it's a little bit cleaner. It's very easy to get your elastic to start fraying, and you don't want that. If you go across it one time, it'll just burn the tips, and then it'll be nice and clean. And then I'm going to use the whip stitch method. I'm going to just use the darker thread so you can see a little bit better. I'm double threading this so that it's a little bit stronger. I'm going to double knot this at the end so that it doesn't come off. So what you're going to do is you're just catch the first layer of the pointe shoe. You're going to pull that through, and then you're going to sew it all the way around. Whether you're doing it on the inside or the outside, you're going to use the same method. Just catching the thread, pulling it through. And obviously you're going to be using pink thread, so it will match a lot better, but I'm just showing you my messy sewing skills. Okay, let's be real, I was not this diligent. Like when I was doing it, I did like one across. But this is better if you know that you're gonna have your pointe shoes for a long time because it doesn't come off. For your first pair of pointe shoes, you're probably going to be in your shoes for a long time. Being a little bit more diligent about your sewing is probably better because you're probably gonna have these shoes the longest of any of your pointe shoes. So I go through the casing, but you wanna make sure that you're not going through the drawstring, because then you won't be able to pull it. And then to end, just double knot it again. You guys can all make fun of my horrible sewing skills. So we're gonna do the other side, but while we're doing that, since I've already explained this side, we're gonna be answering some of your questions that you submitted about your first pair of pointe shoes.
How are pointe shoes supposed, and all in caps, supposed to feel?
Pain is going to be your greatest indicator. I know that it's really difficult to tell because you don't know what is normal pain, but basically just think of it as there's no such thing as normal pain. If something is pinching really badly, if you feel like your toenail is really getting crushed, it's not good. It's also a good indicator that your shoes don't fit if your shoes are way too comfortable. It should not feel like a bedroom slipper. It should be tight enough so that you feel very secure in your shoes.
How do you know when your first pair of pointe shoes is dead?
Oh, this is a good question. Everyone has a different dead point. You're either going to start sinking into the shoe if your box dies first, and then you'll start to feel your toes sliding down to the floor, or your shoes are going to break in the shank where it's going to either push you forward, pull you back. It'll be very difficult for you to releve. So if you just feel like something is very painful or something is not supportive enough for you to be dancing in, that's when you know that your shoes are dead.
What do I do if my ballet teacher doesn't like the pointe shoes that I got fitted in?
Figure out exactly what the problem is rather than coming up with a solution. What I mean by that is a lot of dancers will come back to us and say, my teacher wants a longer vamp, for example, and we don't know why. We'll say, is it because you're not getting over your box? Is it because you're being pulled back? Is it because you're not able to roll through? Is it because it just doesn't look right? But if you're coming to us with a solution, it generally doesn't actually solve the problem, because if your problem is not getting over your box, it may be because your vamp is too long, but it could also be that the shank is too hard, or it could be that your shoes are too tapered, or it could be that it's too narrow, or that the crown is too low. So really coming in with the problem of why your teacher doesn't like your pointe shoes is the most helpful for the fitters, and we have to work with teachers because we don't know what you're doing in class. So if your teacher doesn't like it, definitely come back, but come to us with the problem, not the solution. So we're gonna take a quick break and we're gonna talk about the ribbons. Okay, my foot's still asleep. This is not my shoe and not my size. You can also use the waist seam to help you find your placement. You want to find exactly where your arch is, because that's where the fabric is going to be the bunchiest. If you pull this fabric back, you can kind of see where your arch is. Some people break higher, some people break lower. So mine's gonna be right around here. The ribbon is going to mark right where my arch is, the toppest part of my arch, and it's gonna pull the fabric up. I'm gonna say that the ribbons are gonna go right here. I'm gonna mark both sides. Now this is a stretchy ribbon, so I don't care about angling it. If this was a satin ribbon, I may angle it back, but since this is stretchy, it doesn't matter. I'm just gonna put it right here. For the ribbon, you can do the same thing to make sure it doesn't fray. I usually just fold it once before I sew it down. And this time I'm gonna sew it on the inside just so I can show you that method. I sew the ribbons on the inside and I go below the casing because I just don't wanna get the drawstring caught. And then I'll just sew the same whip stitch method all around. At my peak, I literally did 4 stitches and it took me, I think, 10 minutes to do both, but I was very sloppy and stuff came out all the time. I was like so meticulous at the beginning, and then after a while, I just didn't care. This is literally the ugliest, but like, it'll do its job. See, you can't see on the outside, so it doesn't matter. No one's gonna know. Nobody's gonna know how ugly it is, but that baby is not going anywhere.
How long did it take you to sew your first pair of pointe shoes?
Me?
Yeah.
I think my first pair of pointe shoes, it literally took me 3 hours, and I'm not exaggerating at all. I think I needed to take a break to take a snack because it was so excruciatingly long.
What is the best way to break in your first pair of pointe shoes?
I would suggest not to touch them because a lot of dancers watch YouTube and they're banging them on the floor and they're crushing it between the doors, all of those crazy things. Most of these pointe shoe hacks that you see that professional dancers do, they do this because they are going to wear their pointe shoes for literally 3 days. And if you did that and you killed your pointe shoes, your mom will not be happy. So I would suggest just allow your pointe shoes to soften with your feet. They will mold to your foot and eventually they will be soft enough so that you can articulate your feet a little bit more, but you want to make your pointe shoes last as long as possible, especially if this is your first pair. You're just getting to know them, so you will learn to soften the shoes and break them in later on, but I would say just use your feet to break them in.
Can you maybe give any advice for adults who are going to be getting their first pair of pointe shoes?
Fitting adult dancers in their first pair of pointe shoes is the joy of my life. It is so awesome, and I love that you chose ballet because of your passion and you wanted to do this your whole life. Thank you for bringing your joy to us. You are, in turn, our joy. For adult dancers, because you're already a bit more set, one, it's safer But 2, it's a little bit more difficult and it takes a little bit longer to change your body and change the range of motion. I would say that the number 1 thing is don't compare yourself to 13-year-olds. I think it's important to be patient with yourself if you're an adult dancer and really focus on the joy that this journey brings you rather than how quickly you can go through certain movements or how quickly you can get better. Focus on how awesome it is that you get to do what you love. Okay, so I sewed the ribbons on the inside. It's like Frankenstein. It's so ugly, but no hate because it doesn't show on the outside. Again, this is one of many, 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 many ways of sewing your ribbons and elastic. There's no really wrong or right way to do it as long as your ribbons and elastic are supporting you, as long as they're pulling up the fabric where it needs to, and it stays on your foot. So there we go. It makes my whole day to have a dancer come in for their first pair of pointe shoes. If you guys have any more questions about that, you can leave that in the comments. If I missed anything, let me know. Maybe we'll do a part 2. And if you want us to show you any more of these tutorial videos, then let us know as well. I'll see you guys later.